Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good serious topic for you today. Let's do it. What is the scariest real-life story you know? Some of these are not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Scariest real-life story I know is when my cousin's husband tried to do a murder-suicide. She had left him in a hurry with her 2 daughters. Because of their hasty departure, she left behind a lot of important things. She overestimated her ability to read his moods, and she never imagined that he would try to literally murder her. A couple of months after she had left him, he seemed to calm down. He didn't seem to be angry about her leaving anymore, so she incorrectly thought that it would be safe to return to her old house to get the important documents and things that she left behind. She arranged a day and time with her ex over the phone. One thing, he insisted that she bring her 2 daughters. They were not his children. They were from a previous relationship. But thankfully, my cousin decided that it would be best for her to go alone, and she left her daughters at their friend's house. When she showed up alone, he became irate that she didn't bring the girls. He shot my cousin 4 times and then turned the gun on himself. My cousin was shot twice in the neck and twice in the face, but somehow, the bullets managed to miss major arteries. Her ex died after he shot himself, but my cousin was able to make it to the closest neighbor's house to get help. They lived in the woods, so this was not a short walk. Not a short walk with 4 bullet wounds, anyway. She was probably fueled by adrenaline because she passed out as soon as she knew an ambulance was on the way, but she survived. And you would never guess by looking at her that she had taken 2 bullets to the face. The thing about her ex, he had another family before he married my cousin. He had a wife and 4 kids, who all died in a house fire, one that he was conveniently not home for. I think he killed his previous family. The last time I told this story, I had a lot of people saying that he was clearly very traumatized from his family perishing in a tragic house fire, and that's why he tried to murder my cousin. Poor cousin's ex. He was clearly very troubled. That's not the case. He was actually sadistic and evil. There are a lot of details about my cousin's life with him that I'm not sharing because I don't think it's appropriate to talk about. My cousin is fine sharing the story of how she survived a murder-suicide attempt, but she's not as open about discussing the details of other abuse that happened. So, you just have to take my word for it. This man was disgusting, evil, and sadistic. I lost a friend when we were 18. We were supposed to go to a festival together, but I had to cancel, so she went by herself. She died that day, while walking on the side of a road on her way home. It was dark and raining, and the people driving a van didn't see her. She took the van's side mirror to the back of her head and died instantly. I still think about how things could have been different if I were there. Maybe I would have died instead. Maybe we both would have died. Maybe we wouldn't have been on that road at all, and she'd still be alive, and my son would have the coolest goth godmother ever. A friend who lives alone woke up to someone in her bedroom. He was just standing there watching her. When he saw she was awake, he took off and escaped. Later, she figured out that he had probably been there at least a few other times. Police didn't catch him, still haven't caught him. She can't afford to move. She's taken steps to secure her place, but she's still terrified to fall asleep. I narrowly avoided meeting an online pedophile in real life. I was 16 and was talking to a random guy for months on Snapchat, and he kept asking to meet me. Me being the dumb F I was, I said I would wait until summer, since I would be finished with school then. Thank God my parents found out beforehand, since he was sending me D-pics and a porn video beforehand, and made me block him. For all the wonderful things the internet provides, it also provides access to our most vulnerable commodity. So, glad the parents caught it. Me and the old lady got stuck in a riptide. Oceanside, California. We were young. We were in love still. We were floating in some gentle waves, lost in conversation, but I realized that I hadn't touched the ground under the water in a while, which meant she'd been treading water even longer. I looked at the beach and realized it was 100 yards away. We were both good swimmers, but it didn't matter how hard we tried, we just kept getting farther and farther from the beach. Adrenaline helped for a short while. Luckily, we swam sideways enough to get a current coming back in, but At this point, my wife could not keep her head above water. I had to help her, but I was also running out of strength myself. Eventually, we were close enough, a couple of teenagers came out with boogie boards and helped us. Also, the entire time my dumb sister was sitting on the beach watching. She heard me yelling for help, saw me waving my arms, but she thought I was kidding. Really thought we were going to die. When I was in Navy boot camp, we had this cat who was teaching our online class. This unlucky mother effer. First part of the story, he was a bosun's mate on a ship, basically the guy who ties all the lines. Now, these are big, thick lines that are keeping an aircraft carrier or destroyers, etc. tied in place. If these ropes snap, they have so much pressure that they'll chop people in half if they hit them. Sure. This happened to him. I guess some people lost legs and it hit him in the stomach and disemboweled him. He survived with bad scarring. The next story, the same guy was serving on the USS Cole. If you don't know, Al-Qaeda bombed the USS Cole in 2000. This guy was also serving on board at this time. When the ship started flooding, he went in and saved several people from drowning. However, there was another person trapped underwater, and he had to make the decision to secure a port and save the ship from sinking and killing other people, or save a person who was trapped behind that port. He saved the ship. Hearing him tell this tale, it was very clear that he was still very emotionally effed from that. A local one is a guy who was a hunter, owned a cabin in the woods, spent years digging tunnels underground, so when he caught someone, he would have them run around terrified in the tunnels thinking they could escape. They couldn't. It's now a very, very creepy tourist attraction. My wife went there and lasted about 5 seconds in the tunnels, said it was the creepiest place she'd ever been in. Don't remember how many people he killed down there, but still. I held a door for somebody and they said, "Thank you, Christopher." I had never met them before and known my name. Then she told me it was on my shirt. I was just leaving after a bowling tournament with my team shirt on. A guy I knew in high school, his little sister was kidnapped in broad daylight by their creepy neighbors. This was in a really small town, less than 1,500 people population in Missouri in the late 1980s. One of the neighbors distracted the guy while the other got the sister tied up and in their truck, and then they took off. Drove to a major city about an hour away and got a motel room, where they took turns awing her and beating her up. Their plan was to collect a ransom somehow or another. They strangled her and stabbed her a few times and then left her for dead. They left her naked and dead in a field about another 100 miles away. Apparently, she had the good sense to play dead and took off as soon as they left her. A farmer found her and called 911. Because it was the neighbors of this family, they knew exactly who they were looking for and what vehicle. They basically just put an unmarked police car outside their house and waited for them to come home. The guy was just so distraught and blamed himself for his sister being kidnapped, carried a lot of guilt. I'm sure that they both had a lot of therapy. The story of Floyd Collins, internet historian, does a great video about it on YouTube, which I recommend watching, unless you're claustrophobic, then avoid it at all costs. Essentially, it's the story of a man who got trapped in a tiny tunnel while caving and was stuck there for 18 days while people tried their best to save him and tried to keep him alive by passing down water and food. I won't spoil how it ends in case anyone wants to watch the video, but yeah, I can't really think of anything more scary, to be honest. Back in the early 60s, a young girl disappeared from her home in the north end of my town one night, never to be found or heard from again. The front door was ajar, and a front room window was open. It wasn't until the 80s that authorities were able to piece together a solid theory. Seems the young teenage boy, who was their paper boy at the time, was Ted Bundy, a known serial killer. She was likely his first victim. When I was home alone once at around 15, I was watching a movie and fell asleep only to wake up to the back door to my house wide open with a nearby window completely shattered. I immediately started to panic, then went to go retrieve my phone from my room just to my left of the living room, but there was a man in there who took immediate notice of me and charged at me. He stabbed me in the gut with something like a screwdriver or an ice pick, possibly. He threw me to the ground and started trying to stab me in the face or neck, but instead he gashed open my hand and ripped open my thigh and hit my femoral artery. At that point, I'd been screaming for a while. Luckily, we have a police station near my house, and a neighbor had called the police after seeing people in black approaching my house. Cops arrived in the most lucky way, as I was completely covered in blood. Sirens soon were audible outside, and both of the intruders ran out the back door as I crawled out my front door toward help. They never caught the people who did this to me. I don't remember much after I crawled out, only the pain of the recovery. My family moved about 2 months later. I'm almost 17 now, and it still haunts me knowing they're out there. I gave that neighbor all I had at the time, and that was a note of a bunch of cupcakes I baked for her. That old woman saved my life. Wow, that is just horrible, but you survived. Maybe they were brought to justice in another way. I'm sorry, but thank you for sharing. This is a personal one, so don't know if this counts. Me and my ex were playing Pokemon Go at 3 to 4 a.m. We went to the gym at a park, and I was going to just sit around and win the gym and wait for it to be available again, but I got this really weird feeling in the back of my head like I was being watched, but didn't see anybody. We decided to hop over to a derelict church that has a stop on it and come back when the gym was available again. We go back, and I get that same feeling, and we see this guy walking toward us. Thought he was going to cross the street or something, so I wasn't too concerned, but the closer he walked, we both realized we couldn't really see any facial features, like at all. It's not as though the streetlights were too dim, or he was too far, just generally he looked like he was either missing facial features or had a stocking or sock over his head, blurring them. We decided to walk away and not trip too hard about it until we realized he's picking up the pace. Mind you, he was only half a block down, so we weren't ready to run or anything because there was a good amount of distance between us. As we walked away, we looked behind us to make sure nothing changed, but we realized he picked up some speed, and we did as well. It almost looked like once we did, he started running, so we jog across the street only to run full speed to the next street down. When we get there out of breath, each street is about a half a mile. We reach an intersection 2 streets from my house and look back to make sure we weren't followed. Hands down, I almost lost my mind when I saw the same faceless dude just standing at a tree. Not out of breath or anything, just standing there. There's no way, with the distance between us, he would have made it after us without us hearing him. We ended up running all the way back to my place, cutting through the neighbor's yard. To this day, I never go out to that park at night. It's only 4 blocks from me, but I refuse. 2 adult brothers in my hometown were making, using, and selling meth. They got into an argument about money and how much meth they were using and ended up attacking each other and shooting each other. The house it happened in is considered haunted, and no one has lived there for over 20 years. Worse though, many people in the town say the brothers both died, but the older people in town say that they are both still alive. My orthodontist's assistant filed for divorce, and on the same day her husband came home and murdered her. Left their infant grandson in the house while he took her lifeless body 50 miles away and put her through a wood chipper. They could only identify her remains from her leftover teeth. It's horrifying. Back in the mid-1900s, some guy in the town I live in went down to Mexico for a trip and ended up buying and smuggling some drugs across the border that he'd bought from the cartel. But the thing was, he never paid them, and he thought he could get away. Well, they found him pretty quick and dragged him out into a field, poured gas on him, and burned him to death. I mean, I wouldn't recommend stealing from a drug cartel, but, you know, we all make our choice. And I think mid-1900s maybe meant 1980s or 90s, but the 50s were pretty wild too. There was a guy who owed a drug dealer money. When the guy tried to screw the dealer over, the dealer sent out some dudes to grab him up to make an example of him. When they caught him, they took him to a shitty part of town, tied him bent over to a table, then pulled out a big bag of smack and told him he wasn't leaving until it was all gone. Then they pulled down his jeans and brought in a desperate junkie after junkie, to R him in exchange for a hit. Supposedly this went on for 2 weeks as the bag was large. I don't know about it.